What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down some very important levels to be watching for as we approach tomorrow, what news is coming out that's very important, what earnings are coming out as well, and how the data could affect the market going into tomorrow. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. This offer ends in just 8 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So, look at the market. We had some very, very interesting closes. SPY was just barely in the red. It was actually green for most of the day. It turned red at the very end, getting a slight sell-off, closing down 0.17%. But Tesla closed green, so did NEO, so did the QQQ, and Aapl and Nvda, Microsoft, and most stocks out there closed green. A couple of others were a little red, such as AMD, but most of them, like I said before, were quite green. So we got a pretty decent day for the market. We saw some interesting volatility. But the question is, how will the market move going forward? Are we going to see more downside, more upside? What is likely developing on the charts? I will be talking about this in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about how the market is looking. The Nasdaq has snapped its 4-day losing streak as the 10-year Treasury yield is starting to decrease in value a little bit. And this is helping the stock market pump a bit. So that's a decent sign so far. When it comes to seasonality, and I was calling this out. Now, I know people called out the fact that this is like a midterm election year chart, but just know that this trend, these patterns tend to perpetuate during election years in general. It's not just presidential elections, not just midterm elections, but all of them in general tend to follow a similar trend historically. And in this case, like I was showing you guys earlier, we're still seeing the trend follow because remember, we tend to see our bottom near the very end of October. That is when the market has been bottoming. As you guys know, we made a new low on the S&P 500 on SPY. So with this potentially happening, and it was a low for the last quarter. It's not like the lowest we've ever seen. It's just relative to before for the near term. So with that low forming, right, the market is likely going to see a really, really nice bounce. I went over a lot of reasons in my last couple of videos. Now, there's no guarantee the bottom is in yet, however. So it is still possible the market comes down just a little bit more over the next week to week and a half, and then we see a big rally for November. That's also another possibility. But either way, I made the claim that between 418 and 410 is where the bottom should be, somewhere between there on SPY. And I'd be pretty surprised if we actually go that low. I'm not really counting on that unless something really bad happens. But I believe, like I said before, and like I've been saying for the last few months, the market has been bearish. It's been dropping quite a bit, correcting in a very healthy manner. And we're going to likely see some upside for November/December for the S&P 500, for the QQQ, and many tickers out there. It may sound like crazy, but once you see other things I've been talking about, it's going to make more sense. So for the near term, however, I'm not going to worry too much about November and December. I will talk more about things like that in later videos, but for now, I just want to focus on tomorrow. However, I still am leaning more bullish for November and December nonetheless. But anyways, what about tomorrow specifically? I want to actually focus more on tomorrow. So what about tomorrow in the more short term? So for Tuesday, we're going to see some volatility during the first 15 and 30 minutes after the market opens. We have the S&P Global PMI reports coming out, not to mention the services and manufacturing data, and also from the Richmond Fed, they're releasing the same thing. So lots of services and manufacturing data will be coming out for the first 15 and 30 minutes of the trading session. So make sure you're prepared for some high volatility at 9:45 and 10 a.m. Eastern time. Then after that, at 1 p.m., we have the 2-year note auction coming out. That could change the direction of the market. It all depends on this percentage. So I will talk about that tomorrow, but expect some volatility in the morning thanks to this. The market was very fearful before. It was almost at extreme fear. Now it's becoming less fearful than before, and the market is likely in a bottoming process. I already called that out, and I believe that there is potential for the market to bounce, but don't forget, guys, it's also going to depend on earnings. That's going to play a big role as well. For tomorrow, before the market opens, we have Coca-Cola, Verizon, GE, and just a couple of others. And then after the market closes, we have Microsoft, Alphabet, Snap, and a couple of others as well. For Wednesday, we have Meta and IBM. And then for Thursday, we have Amazon and just a couple of others. So it's going to be worth watching. We will see what happens with Coca-Cola's earnings. But for now, what do I see on the charts? How are the charts looking? And honestly, guys, we're not looking too bad. There could be a change in market structure because one of the things I talked about was when you look at the 4-hour time frame on SPY, there's a possible Elliott wave developing. You guys can see the 5-wave count right here. And in case you can't see it, I'm just going to try to draw this out one quick final time for the video. So right here, okay, you could draw out this wave here. This drop right here was wave 1. This was wave 2, this pump. Wave 3 happened, wave 4, and finally we're at wave 5 for the final bottom that's coming very soon. The bottom could be in possibly. I don't know for sure. I can't promise that. It depends on earnings. But either way, the market is in a bottoming process and we're going to see a change. Instead of making lower highs and lower lows, I think the market's going to start making higher highs and higher lows very soon. I think November is going to be a decent month for the markets. I'm still leaning in that direction. But now the question is, what about for the short term? Is the bottom in? This is going to depend on earnings and other factors, but I just wanted to call out a couple of things. So when you look back at the 1-hour time frame, I don't know if the bottom is in or yet or not, excuse me. So we're going to be watching 420 as a critical support on SPY. If we lose 420, there's going to be a risk of this potentially coming down, back down to 418, and we could see a little bit more downside. However, let me just say something. We have a possible inverse head and shoulders like structure developing. This could be a bottoming formation. And if we manage to hold 420 tomorrow, we could see a rebound towards this high up to about 425. And we could see this inverse head and shoulders play out. So 420 is going to be key. If we break and hold 420, we just keep holding above it and start pushing. Watch 422, 423.5, and then 424.5 and 425 as resistance levels. My gut tells me it's going to hold and we might see an inverse head and shoulders, but just to be safe, I can't promise that I'm not like super convicted like I was yesterday. I have less conviction in either direction because it depends on earnings and I can't make any promises just yet because I can't really predict how earnings are going to look. Next off, for Tesla, we have something very interesting developing. The chart is looking like it's trying to base around the very low 200s. So if Tesla holds this 210 area, 208 to 210 area, we're going to likely come down and then retest and try to bounce. If we bounce off this area, Tesla could start pushing back up to 216 and possibly get closer to 220. If we come down here and we break, Tesla could come all the way back down to 205 or 202. So it depends on 208 to 210. Do we bounce off that zone or do we end up sinking lower? My gut tells me we're going to see this hold and try to bounce. We're going to see Tesla try to uptrend just temporarily, right? Just a temporary push to the upside, at least approaching some earnings. But just to be safe, make sure you watch both sides and see. We have a possible inverse head and shoulders on Tesla. You could see it on the 30 minutes time frame as well. There could be a little drop coming, then a bounce. So that's the most likely possibility based off TA, but nothing is guaranteed. No promises can be made technically until we see earnings and factors like that. So I can't truly give you guys high conviction on that claim. For Aapl, we have a possible inverse head and shoulders with the bullish divergence that developed. 170 is a decent support for it as well, and we're holding support quite nicely. So on Aapl, 172.5 is a very, very key level because of the fact that we're seeing some buyers defending it right there. If we hold 172.5 on Aapl, expect this thing to start pushing up for 175. If we lose 172.5, there's a risk of it coming down to 170. That's going to be key. Now, what is most likely going to happen, in my opinion, is the most likely possibility is we're going to try to hold 172.5, maybe come a little bit below it and see buyers step in above it. If that ends up happening after the PMI reports come out tomorrow morning, then we could see this thing start pushing up for 175, and the odds do favor that. Now, even though I am favoring that, I want to just be open-minded because it depends on earnings. Never forget that. On the QQQ, the same thing is developing. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure as well. This looks like it may hold, but it's going to depend on earnings and other factors. If we hold support around this 355 to about 353.5 area, around here, I think that this thing could bounce quite nicely and start pushing up to the 200 EMA towards 361. If we fail, we break below 353.5, expect this to come all the way down towards 350. So what do I think is more likely? I would say that with the inverse head and shoulders, there's a good chance that this is going to push up towards the 361 plus area, and there could be a really nice inverse head and shoulders. My gut is telling me that it's going to come down a bit for a backtest of this support, and we're going to see some buyers step in again, try to push it higher, approaching earnings. We might see some more hype, some more excitement from big tech, and that could push the market even higher. There's a real possibility of that, so we could see the QQQ test 361 soon. But just to be safe, watch those levels, and we'll see if that ends up playing out. For Nvidia stock, this is looking like it also has a possible like inverse head and shoulders. If this is the case, it's a little hard to see on this chart what I'm trying to show you. So I'm going to switch over here. But Nvidia has a possible change in market structure, right? What was the market structure before? We made lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. It might start doing the opposite, making higher highs, higher low, higher high, and etc. So this chart, we have a possible bearish divergence on Nvidia right here. You could see it was just continuing to uptrend while the RSI came down a bit, and the 30 minutes time frame looks like it may flip a bit. So I could see a little retracement on Nvidia. It's going to likely retest 425 to 420, and we're going to be watching to see if this holds. Does Nvidia hold this 420 zone? If we hold it, we could be forming another inverse head and shoulders with the bullish divergence from before, and that could lead to a drop and a bounce and a push up towards these higher levels, all the way back up to 440. But if it fails, if it ends up breaking below 420, we could see it start sinking to these lower levels. So it all depends on that test, but it is very probable and very likely NVIDIA is going to try to get that bounce. So the most likely possibility would be this like inverse head and shoulders. We kind of like come down here, we bounce and try to push up higher over the next couple of days. It depends on tech earnings and things like that, so I can't promise anything, guys. It is always possible we come right back down like this. You never know. It depends on earnings, but I'm leaning a bit more in favor of this possibility where we just slowly climb up like this. It could take a couple of days to get that, but we could be forming that inverse head and shoulders. So watch for that test on Nvidia. It's going to likely retrace a bit, and we'll see if the buyers defend very, very well. All right, so look for a little drop in a balance throughout the market. That is very probable for us moving forward. We saw SoFi come down, still not looking the strongest from a technical standpoint because the 4 hour is still looking kind of weak. We're going to be watching the $7 support. Can we hold it or not? And if we manage to hold it, we could see this thing trying to retrace a little bit more before some buyers step in and come back to push it towards 7.5. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. For a couple of other tickers like the IWM or the Russell 2000, it came up, it tried to bounce, and it came right back down, but it closed very flat. So it's trying to base right now. If we get this accumulation structure to play out on the hourly, we also have a potential, base that's forming around 364. If we get that bounce and we're expecting another rebound towards 367, it could range straight up here for a bit. But it's going to depend on earnings and factors like that. But I do believe there's a good chance it's going to try to base soon and try to bounce. For Microsoft, it's uptrending a little bit, quite nicely. This is actually the level we were calling out yesterday. There's a possible inverse head and shoulders. Going to be looking for a push towards this 335 area if we manage to hold above 332.5. So watch for a push up on Microsoft. It looks more bullish on a technical standpoint. This could help the market to some extent. AMD looking a little weak. It actually broke down below this 50 EMA. Still downtrending, still a little bit weak, but there is a bullish divergence that's still developing. So we'll see if 100 holds. If we hold 100, look for a rebound towards 102. If it fails at 100, it's going to come down to 98. My gut tells me it's going to try to hold 100 and try to bounce very soon. Now, for Netflix, I was worried this thing could come down a little bit. We came down a bit towards 398, but we held support and we came right back up. And we have a bullish wedge forming. So this tells me that Netflix might try to break a little higher and retest 410. This has some potential, so I could see 410 again on the stock. Ford is looking a little bit weaker, but it's very stationary. I think we're going to bounce right here and retest 11.6 and just continue to trade sideways. Not really a whole lot is going on amidst all the things going on around the world and also the current fundamentals. When it comes to something else such as, let me find the VIX. I want to look at the VIX first. This had a bearish divergence, which led to the rejection for today. And it's going to depend on, do we continue to break below 19.47? If we break below it, there's a gap down here to fill, and that's going to help the markets to some extent, or because of the markets potentially pumping. This also could be a head and shoulders forming on the VIX, but we need confirmation first. So if it breaks below the 50 EMA, that's going to be confirmation of some downside for the VIX because of the market pumping. If the opposite happens, then it is what it is, but there is potential for the market to bounce. Looking at the VIX, the dollar is looking a little weaker. You can see it came down, but it's establishing a base right here at 105.5. So look for a rebound towards 105.89. And if it rejects off that, it could continue to remain bearish. Now it's looking more bearish on the 4 hour time frame. It's looking a little bit weaker. So we'll see if the dollar continues to sink. As of right now, there's also a possible head and shoulders like structure developing. It's looking a little bit more bearish. So this could be bullish for the stock market. I'm going to be looking for a rebound first and see if it is just like rejects and establishes a lower high before continuing to sink. So the market may kind of slow down in the morning and then start pumping later on based off that. Coinbase got a nice base today. Very, very nice push to the upside, managing to break above its resistance. We're going to be watching this thing potentially make an attempt for some higher levels. So on the 4 hour, I could see this thing get very close to this 80 resistance. If it breaks at 82 is a real possibility. It looks a bit more like it's about to test some resistance. No guarantee it's going to break it, but there is potential for it to try to rebound. For something else such as Google, you could see Google is looking quite decent. They got a nice bounce off the 200 EMA. We look like we're about to test this resistance right here. So I think that it depends on if we can break the 50. We haven't broken the 50 EMA yet. If it breaks 138.5 and holds that, I can see this thing pushing for 140. If it rejects off this, it's going to come down to 135. My gut is telling me we're going to see this thing make an attempt right before its earnings to try to get up to 140. Maybe some buyers step in right beforehand. The odds do favor that. For Amazon, earnings is coming up soon for the stock as well. And when we zoom out of the chart, you can see we have a nice double bottom-like formation. Also, we could be forming an inverse head and shoulders on the hourly. So we might see Amazon kind of like retrace towards 125, then bounce and try to push up for 128.8 or the 200 EMAs. Look for a little drop and bounce on Amazon. That seems very probable, but we're going to be watching what happens with earnings just to be safe. Now, Meta has earnings coming out soon, and it bounced very close to 318, which is the level I called yesterday. It came close to it. There's a possible inverse head and shoulders on here. It could retrace a bit towards 311, and I think buyers will step in and try to defend if it does. And we could be looking for a push for 321 soon. So a drop and then a bounce to 321 is very probable. All right, guys, that's what technicals are looking like so far. They're looking a bit more bullish. But just to be safe, let's not turn way too bullish. Let's wait and see what happens with Coke's earnings just for confirmation. Let's wait and see how things are looking to see when the market's going to bottom before we get a very, very bullish end for the year. And for now, I think that the market has given us some very good buying opportunities, and not financial advice, by the way, but I believe that the future is still very bright, and I think the bulls have a nice edge for the end of the year. But remember, guys, my conviction is not super high in the claims I made. I believe it's possible and probable that what I said will come true, but I'm not super convicted because it depends on earnings and factors like that. All right, so we'll see what happens. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and I'll see you guys once again. Thanks, and peace out.